All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining. I know it's been a few months since we've had our information meeting. Last one was in June, so glad to have you guys all back. Let's go ahead and get started. And so who will be giving the updates today? So myself, if you don't know me already, my name's Kelly McGarry with the Travel Office. And we will be introducing our new hire, April Berger. And I'll get to that in a few slides, but we're super excited to have her. So and she'll be doing one of the slides as well. So you'll get a chance to hear from her. So last time I started off with a meme, so figured I'd do the same thing this time. And since Halloween is tomorrow, so the in-person meeting we'll be doing some Halloween stuff. But since it's the day before, we'll keep it Halloween as well. But this meme's funny. I'm a big fan of Finding Nemo, and so this extra Halloween candy is making my stomach sick. Oh, look, more Halloween candy.
I haven't
seen the movie. Dory has short-term memory loss, so super funny movie if you haven't seen it already. And so hopefully you get to just pretend you're Dory and eat a bunch of candy tomorrow. So just keep forgetting that you already had some and keep eating more. And we'll have some at the info meeting tomorrow too. So if you're planning on stopping by, we'll have some for you.
Let's get some sound, unmute your speakers. All right.
This next part, still having a little bit of fun. So we thought it might be cool to share our travel office pets. So this slide is, I'll actually let you guys try to guess. So it's either Teresa, April, or my pets. And this is Buddy and Brandy. So go ahead and take a guess on who you think it is. Anyone? Anyone? Teresa's. All right, you're right. Did you know already? Maybe you did. But this is Buddy and Brandy in their Halloween costumes. So these are Teresa's pets. Super fun. Next one, so it could be me or April's. And I put a little quote in here. So can I claim dog food separately, or is it? I would say if a dog was traveling and they needed dog food, I think we would consider that to be per diem. Since it is a meal. And these are April's dogs. So it's Luna on the left and then Pearl on the right.
Muted anywhere.
Both Huskies. They're awesome.
That's on.
And the last one is me, obviously, since I'm the last one left. But so the middle cat is my cat. Her name is Sheba. So she lives with me in Seattle. The other two dogs are Redford and Archie, and they're my family dogs. So they're in San Diego with my dad and my stepmom and all my siblings. Hearing background conversation. Oh yeah, let me just take a look.
There we go. It doesn't make any.
Mute all. Here we go. There's a button that lets me do it.
Energy. Is this making sense?
Yes. Okay. Hopefully that fixes the issue. Is catnip reimbursable? Yeah, that one's going to need a 64, I think. We'd have to discuss that one a little bit more in our office. I don't know. But so catnip, probably not reimbursable. We're going to go with a 64 for that one. But I think I've fixed the issue. So, but if you hear any more feedback, just let me know.
Okay.
All right.
Somebody
now to the real stuff. So for the next slide, I'm going to introduce April Berger. I know we announced it on the listserv, but we're super excited to have her. And so I'll have her introduce herself real quick, and she's going to do our next slide. And let me turn it over.
Hi, everyone. My name is April Berger, and I've been working for the university for 2 years now, and I joined travel back in July. I'm really excited to be a part of this team and to continue to serve you, Deb. I'm sure some of you have already received emails from me, but feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to help you and answer any questions that you may have. With that said, I am excited to announce that the travel office is now renaming ourselves, and we are now Travel Services. We did this so that we could better align our future state goals, and the office name has changed. So please make sure to update any of your department resources to say Travel Services. Please be aware that our email address has not changed. It will still be travel@uw.edu, but you will see us branding ourselves as Travel Services in the future. And with that said, in collaboration with UW Marketing, we will be updating and upgrading our communication materials and our website. This will include a new layout, a new look, and we will be doing our best to add additional tools that will help assist you with all of your travel needs. We will keep you updated with all of these updates via the listserv.
All right. Thank you, April. And so, yeah, we're excited about the travel services, and we really wanted to just kind of tell the story that we're here to support, you know, from the time of booking to the end. And so travel office kind of has a little bit of a dull kind of feel to it. And so we're excited to kind of market ourselves as travel services, and UW Marketing is helping us out a lot. And they've already done some mock-ups for the homepage of the website and things like that. And it looks really cool. So we'll definitely be sharing that with you. Can't wait. Next slide is a little bit of data. So a little project of mine. And so what I took a look at this time is some travel website metrics. So it's pretty cool. What I looked at was our our fiscal year. So starting from July 1 of last year up until June 30 of this year. And I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what you guys are doing on the website and where you're going. Kind of had some general ideas in my head, but what I used was Google Analytics is a free software that you can use to track website information. And so these were kind of some of the interesting things I was able to pick from it. And so there were 207,524 page visits. So essentially what that means is that's just how many times somebody came to one of our pages on our website at some point. Even if you're just there for, you know, half a second or for 2 minutes, it's just how many times did people arrive at one of your pages. So that's what that means. This next part I definitely thought was interesting. So how did you get there? There's a way to track sort of like how you actually arrived to the site. I think if you pay for like the pro version, it kind of goes into a little bit more detail. But the part that I found interesting was that more than a direct link, people are actually getting to our website from an organic search. I kind of view this as a little bit of a negative thing. So I feel like people shouldn't be having to search quite that much to get to the website. I know when I used to use the website when I was doing reimbursements, I did actually use Google quite a bit to get to the pages. It's actually really quick. If you just, if you Google UW travel and then lodging, it does come up pretty nicely. So I think that's why people are using it. And I think kind of one of the weaknesses, one thing that I'm working on right now is definitely the homepage. I know we've talked about our website rework, but since I've been changing the URLs and things, but that top menu, just where like the policies and procedures are and the drop downs and just sort of like the main buttons on our homepage is something that we're taking a close look at. And I think kind of with that sort of rework where people can really get to our homepage and get to the page they're looking for, hopefully that number will shift to more percentage to the direct link. I feel like it should be more like a 70-30 kind of thing. And then so that other number, the direct link, would just mean it's basically any time that you are, punching the actual website into the page, or if you like clicked a link on our page and it brought you to another page, things of that nature. So where you're actually kind of getting actually directed there as opposed to trying to find it on the internet. What type of device? I thought this was kind of interesting. So we've kind of wondered, how many people ever access our website via a mobile phone? Something we've actually been curious of before. And so Google Analytics actually has that information, which is pretty cool. I thought maybe a little bit more percentage would be on the mobile side, but I guess it's just about 4%, and then 95 on PC, and then the remainder on tablets here and there. Another thing I took a look at was sort of just did some metrics on the percentage of which pages you guys are going to take a look at the most. And kind of the one that really stood out, and after thinking about it, it really does make sense that the meal page, obviously the homepage, people are going to win the homepage would be the most, but the meal per diem page is where you guys are going to the most. And so I'd imagine it's where most people, they're gathering what the per diem is for when they're planning their travel and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of makes sense that one would be visited a lot, just because you're kind of constantly acquiring information from that page. And then some of the other ones, so lodging 10%, ground 11, airfare 8, policy accountability 5, receipts 4. So just thought I'd give you guys a little look into what you guys are looking at the most. And one thing that we will use this data for is when I go to adjust those menu items, I'm going to kind of take into account, what pages you guys are looking at the most. And so, for example, so meals, I want to make sure to have it really right there on the home page in a very prominent space so that you can get to it right away. So kind of the background and the reason on why we're looking at that stuff. Airfare policy change survey. So we will be, last meeting I had discussed that we were working on a survey. We just haven't quite got it ready yet, but now it is ready. And so I'm going to start by just saying what our suggested policy change would be. And then the next steps are we are going to release the survey. It's actually now live. I'm going to show you the link in a couple slides. And then we're going to gather that feedback and then just kind of see what your guys' thoughts are on it. And then from that, then we may, present it up to our leadership and see if we can get this policy changed. And so just a reminder, I'll go through kind of what we were talking about last time. But just know that this is not an official policy change right now, just under discussion. We're going to gather the feedback and then it may change in the future. Okay. And so let me minimize this real quick. So shifts in the airline industry are making it very difficult to break airfare upgrades apart by class. So that's kind of the main problem that we're solving. So if you have been booking travel recently, you may see Delta is a good example, but there's other airlines where they are just constantly changing what the name of the class of something is. So it's just really difficult to determine whether it's first or business or if it's a coach upgrade. And so that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve. And the reason that makes it is a problem for us is because our policy specifically states based on what class it determines like what approval you need to get. And so there's a lot of administrative time being wasted deciphering what that is and then figuring out who to go to and those sort of things. And so I mentioned right here in the bullet, so Delta 1 class is a great example. They actually market like their business and their first. It's just one class. It's called Delta 1. And so as someone who's a traveler and you're trying to, do your travel planning, it's difficult if you know that you're approved for business class and you're going to Delta 1. It's like, am I on first class or business class? So that's an issue. We've definitely talked about that before. We've seen things called Mint class for business class. Obviously, that's confusing. Comfort Plus, that is a coach upgrade, but the word comfort, it's not a clear indicator. And so that's the problem that we're looking into. And then, yeah, this already mentioned. So determine the proper authority. Who does it go to? Does it go to the dean? Does it go to the administrator? We're trying to eliminate all those issues. And the policy change itself is pretty simple. So what we are suggesting is that all airfare upgrades, so if it's a seat fee, a coach upgrade, business class, first class, no matter what it is, then it's going to be approved by the department authorized person. The authorized person is the person who now gives your pre-trip approval. And I'll touch on what the authorized person is here. So just as a reminder, this is something that you're already working with. So whoever's given the pre-trip approval is your authorized person. But just a reminder of who that is, so you have an idea of what we're talking, who would be giving these airfare approvals. If it's a general budget, so like an operating budget, it would just be whoever the head of that organizational unit is. So generally that's going to be like your executive director or the chair of your department would be that person. For grant and contract funding, it changes a little bit. So it would be, for the most part, it's probably going to be the PI, or if that grant or contract is assigned to a department, then it would just be whoever the department chair is that it was assigned to. So those are kind of the two options for grant contract. And then one thing to keep in mind is when the claimant is the authorized person, so the traveler is that person that gives that approval, just know that they can't give their own approval. So in that case, then they'd probably be going up, to the dean or one of the vice presidents for that approval. But that would just be when the chair is traveling. So for the other stuff, it's authorized person for them. They need to make sure. And the authorized designee should be the traveler's supervisor or higher. So just making sure that that approval is going up the ladder as opposed to horizontal or lower, something like that. And so the survey is now live. We're using Google Survey for it. It's actually a very, very, very simple survey. And so I have the link right here. Don't worry about jotting it down right now because right after the meeting, I am going to send out an email with that link. So that way you actually have something you can click. If you want to write it down or punch it into the URL, you're welcome to from this as well. But just know that I'm going to send the actual link. So it'll be embedded in the email and you can click it. And it's just one question. So what we really just want to know is, whether you're in favor of the policy or not. And then the next one is just a sort of like a paragraph comment box to just give any feedback that you have. So any of your thoughts or concerns with it are definitely something that we want to hear. And then if you are in favor of it, if you want to share like why you're in favor of it or why it's going to help you out, would be good information for us to have because we will need to get this approved. So kind of the purpose of the survey, if we were to get it approved, is just kind of backing, that this is something that campus wants. So just make sure that you provide that feedback if you have it. And obviously your feedback is appreciated. So one required question and then the comment box is optional. So it's, would only take you a minute or so. All right, next thing we're going to look at is 14-hour rule clarification. And so this isn't really a policy change. It's something that we were requested to just sort of update and clarify on regarding the 14-hour rule. And the office that we are working with is UW Post-Award Fiscal Compliance. If you don't know that office, they're the ones who manage compliance for grant funding. But they also have sort of like a subsection in which they manage travel related to grant funding. So if you didn't know that already, it's definitely something you should be aware of. Especially if you're supporting federal funding and everything like that. Their website does have a travel compliance page specific to UW and grant funding. So if you're not using that already, I highly recommend. And as a reminder, our compliance is as it relates to all funding types. So your funding type can always be more strict than our compliance. And so make sure that you're aware of that. And so that's what that office is. And so what we're doing is, this is kind of one of the very few places where we sort of actually mention grant funding in our compliance. So we were asked to update a portion of that. Also the 14-hour rule. So what the 14-hour rule is if you meet the 14-hour rule, then a traveler can qualify for business class without having to go up to the dean, the vice president, or the vice provost. So that's kind of what it is. They also, if you don't get business class, they could also take the option of a brief rest period, not to exceed 24 hours. Kind of what that means is instead of getting business class, then what they could do is they can have that 24-hour rest period to sort of gather themselves from the long travel. So usually what that kind of means is just one extra night of lodging. So like if you're going domestic travel, usually, you show up the night before if you have a meeting in the morning and then you go to the meeting that next morning. But with the 14-hour rule, kind of what that's saying is you can get a little bit more of a buffer and maybe have like one extra night. That's not considered personal travel. It's more like required for business just to get, rested and ready for the work sort of thing is what the purpose is. What is that web page again? Can you please include it on your website? Can you clarify exactly what you're talking about? And I'll come back to that one too. I'll take a look, but I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. And so the clarification though is, so the compliance is the same. But before, what we stated was that this is just not allowed on federal funding at all. And that is true still for the business class airfare upgrade. But what their team let us know is that would not necessarily negate the fact that they could get like a brief rest period before the travel. So the 14-hour rule, you could potentially get that option of getting the lodging the night before as part of that 14-hour rule. But for airfare, you can't get the business class upgrade. And so if you check our website, we've already updated it and you'll see now that it's federal funding, it's blocking for business class, but it's not for the rest period. So that's sort of the thing that we had made a change to. All right. Next thing is an update regarding a project that we have been working very hard on. So we announced it last time that this is something that we've been working on. And now we are very, very close to finalizing. We tried to get it finalized right before the meeting, but we're so close. We didn't quite get it in time. And so we will be announcing kind of the finale of this very soon. But just to give you a little background, so what we've been working on is we've been doing an RFQQ. It's basically the same as an RFP, but we're going out to bid to add some additional travel agencies to our selection of choices for booking travel. So if you are someone who is interested in maybe changing the agency you're already using, if you're running into issues, or if you're just interested in a travel agency in general, then you would definitely want to kind of keep track of this and make sure you follow all of our announcements and everything. I announced last time that we've gotten some questions about Christopherson Business Travel. Our relationship is going to remain the same. It's the same contract, no changes. It's already been extended. I can't remember how long it's been extended to, but it's been extended for a significant period of time. And they will just be included as part of the pool. So we already have the relationship with them. It's already established. We already have campus using them. And they will just be included within your choices. So if you're still interested in CBT, you'd just be choosing between them or the other options. So they're just included in that. Like I mentioned, it's in the final stages. So we actually sent the contracts to the awardees. I can't quite announce who those are yet, just because we're waiting for them to be signed and finalized. So just in case any hiccups or anything like that happen with any of them, we want to make sure that it's fully signed and executed, and then we'll let you guys know what that is. And so the next step then will be sort of formally announcing who the awardees are, and then sort of like what our plans are for adoption and onboarding and setting up, presentations for you guys to hear, what their services are and all that kind of stuff. So there'll definitely be more to come on that project. This next thing is a policy change. So this is regarding our receipt policy. We did make some minor changes to this. And this policy is effective today. So just keep in mind that, so this isn't something that's going to be released in the future. This is something that should be initiated and taken care of today. And so just to give a little background on what's going on with this. So this is sort of in collaboration with other finance units. We'd already kind of done something similar recently, but we're really trying to just make the receipt policy more clear to understand. The issue is that we've been running into is people are applying, concepts and compliance from different receipt policies, and they're kind of trickling into other units. And so what we wanted to do is really get it in a way that it's understandable. And specifically what we're really addressing is the $75 rule. So when receipts aren't required under $75, the way that we get to treat it for travel is actually different than you get to treat it for other things. And so the way that we kind of rewrote it is in a way that you really understand what that $75 means for travel and what it protects against. Do you mean effective with trips occurring after today? We need time to notify these travelers. Yes, so we're saying today as in, just do it kind of like as soon as you can as of today. So you don't need to, enforce it on a expense report that you're approving today. It just means that just know that it is now effective, and go ahead and just start implementing it, as quick as you can into your department. If it's like on Monday, now you're making the formal announcement, that's totally fine. But we just wanted to say today, that way it's not, in a few weeks from now or anything like that. It's something that we want to get changed right away. And so just go ahead and just, be as quick with it as you can. So let's go ahead and get into the details of it. So this is how we've written the policy to be, and I'll kind of highlight what really is different. It's not really a whole lot that's different. It's I kind of see it more as like a rewording and a rework more as a policy change, but there is a little bit different. So we do want to call it a policy change, just to be clear that it is a little bit different. And so how we've written it now is to say that receipt documentary evidence must be provided for all expenses unless a meeting an exception. So previously what we did is we had a list of expenses where you need to give a receipt regardless of the cost. And then essentially kind of after that, then you're protected under the $75 rule. Now we've kind of written it in a way that a receipt is required unless you meet an exception. And on the next slide, I'm gonna touch on what those exceptions are. And so that's kind of a little bit different than kind of the way it's been written before. This is the same kind of requirement that we've always had. Receipts must show all pertinent information and proof of payment. So nothing different there. But the way that we're saying that it's, you need to get a receipt unless you meet an exception is a little different than you've seen it written before. I'm reading a question real quick. What is the change exactly? Are receipts required for all expenses now even below 75? No, that's not the case. I'm gonna, there's a couple slides. So I'm gonna get to the exceptions and then it'll make a little bit more sense. For rail train, does this include regional rail services like Sound Transit? No. So with rail and train, that's a good question. We do get asked about this sometimes. Some things are kind of like marketed as a train, but it's not really like a train. It's more of a public transportation. Where we see this happen a lot is like in Europe, where something's like advertised as a rail, but really it's just like a public transportation where it just has one basic class and it's cheap. If that's the case, then you can treat that like public transportation. And you'll see on the next slide that public transportation is protected under the $75. So for that question, I would say for Sound Transit, I consider that to be public transportation for sure. And so these were the expenses that we previously had said that we require a receipt regardless of cost. Now we're wording it in a way that they just have additional requirements. So basically the same as before, it's just written a little bit differently. But remember, airfare, we need the itemized itinerary. So you're meeting that receipt requirement, and then you need to include the itinerary. So just one thing to just make sure that's clear. Fees related to change cancellation of travel plans. So that's the same, just making sure that there is a receipt and that it actually includes, what the change is, where they're flying now and all that kind of stuff. So kind of similar to airfare. And then for lodging, itemized if not prepaid. So just making sure when they're turning in the folio that have the breakdown for room rate and taxes. The car rental, we require the final rental agreement. So that's why it may be confusing if you're just trying to get a receipt, because car rentals, a lot of times they have pre-trip confirmations and things like that. And that's not necessarily the final rental agreement. So that's why we want to highlight that that's still a requirement. And then for rail and for train, just the same as airfare. If you're booking like Amtrak, it has the itinerary and it shows what class you're on and stuff like that. So just making sure you're treating that the same as airfare. And so now let's get to the exceptions. So this is where it is a little bit different. One thing that we have had on the website is kind of mentioning the waiver and that you have to adopt the waiver into your internal policy. We kind of have been asked to just go ahead and remove that because we don't really need to have the waiver on there. With travel, we're actually protected for these expenses just based on state compliance. Up to $50. And then what the waiver does is allows us to go up to 75. So because of that, we don't really have a reason to necessarily adopt the waiver. Our compliance, we already kind of have our own sort of $75 rule that we're protected on through the state. And so that's why we're going ahead and removing that information. And so these are the exceptions. So we still have the $75 exception. We're just wording as an exception as opposed to just the $75 rule. And so what it is miscellaneous travel expenses less than $75. A receipt is not required specifically for these miscellaneous travel expenses. So the reason we're wording it as miscellaneous travel expenses is we're correcting the issue of this $75 rule from travel being applied a little bit too broadly, is the kind of the issue of that's why it's being written in that way. And so what we did is we actually pulled what is considered to be miscellaneous travel expenses. This comes from the state compliance, and this is sort of the list that they provide. And so we're just sort of going off of that. And so what we have on there are parking fees. So that would be, CTAC parking or people going for like a day meeting and getting parking fees. A lot of times those receipts can get lost. And so that is definitely on there. Transit fares, so that would be just public transportation. So like you mentioned before in that question, the Sound Transit, that would definitely be protected. Ferry and tolls. And so car service, which you guys are already using it for, Uber, Lyft, taxi, town car, and limo. The state compliance also mentions baggage fees. So baggage fees, a lot of times, those are definitely less than 75. And then the last one is registration fees. One that's not included on here that I am currently exploring, I'm just waiting for the state to get back to me, is I'm wondering about gas expense. So they don't mention gas expense, and I'm talking about gas expense for rental cars. So when people rent a car and then they stop at the Shell station, they turn in a gas receipt. I have noticed that there are a lot of problems with gas stations. A lot of them are very old and they won't print the receipt. And so what I'm pushing for, I'd really like gas to be included on that list. I'm just double checking with the state because it actually doesn't mention it in there. And so I want to just get clarification from them if they had any issues of that or allowing it. So just kind of making sure that it is okay. So just keep in mind that gas, if you're concerned about gas receipt, that I'm pushing to get that one added as well. Any questions? So only single lifts above 75. What if the total amount of Lyft Ubers is over 75? So for this $75 rule, I may go on the website and add this information too. I didn't think about adding that yet. This is for just single expenses that are under $75. So if they took like 6 Ubers during a trip, if you compile them all together and they're over 75, if they're under 75, but then the total of each of them is under 75, you pull them all together and then it's 120, you would still be protected under the 75. So it's for each single use. International travel, foreign currency included for these miscellaneous expenses listed here. Yes, it would be for just all receipts. So it's not defined based on domestic or foreign receipts. It's just for receipts in general. And it would be $75, so 75 US dollars. So essentially you would convert, if it's in a foreign currency, you convert it. And then if it's under $75, after you convert it to US dollars, then the same compliance would apply. Is it 70? Okay, is it 75 per receipt? I already answered that. What about travel visas? Is a receipt required? So we didn't look at travel visas and it doesn't mention it in the state compliance, but we can certainly explore that. So for now, it's gonna be a no since we don't have it on there, but that is a good one to take a look at. So let me go ahead and take a look. And this is pretty newly developed. And so there can be still a little bit more research on how we define miscellaneous travel expenses. So I'm definitely open to that feedback, and it's something I'm going to kind of finalize and work on with the state. Let's see. What about lodging that does not provide itemized receipts? They do not charge tax and do not list check in our checkout dates. Yeah, lodging can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes we take these by a case-by-case basis, but definitely all resources should be exhausted to get an itemized receipt. Usually we always recommend, contacting the hotel, everything like that. But we have seen issues, especially when people are traveling very remote locations or they're staying at like a bed and breakfast or something like that. Sometimes it can be difficult to acquire the receipt. And usually we just work on those by a case-by-case basis and just make sure that the department does their due diligence and gets as much documentation as they can. And then in certain cases, we would just go ahead and allow it if it feels like there's strong proof to show that they're really just not going to get the receipt, and maybe they turn in like a credit card statement as well. It's a potential issue, but it's best not to address it that way and to do the due diligence to get a receipt. But for those weird one-offs, we usually recommend that you reach out to us, and then we kind of work you through it and try to protect you as best we can through an audit. So to be clear, is there any need for our unit to keep receipts on record in case we are asked for them? We know traveler does not need to submit for reimbursement, but we do need to be able to produce them if asked. So just the receipt auditability is, there's nothing changed with that and the way that you store and, attach receipts. So just know that this has nothing to do with, where you're storing the receipts. This is actually separate from that. So you'll just want to just make sure that you're staying within the normal compliance that you do. One thing to keep in mind that's important for records management, if you haven't seen it already, is the Ariba scanning policy is probably one of the more important things to be aware of. And that's actually a UW records management compliance. If you go to their website, or if you just Google UW Ariba scanning policy, it's on their website. And that goes over like when you attach receipts to Ariba, kind of what you need, what the requirements are when you do that, and then kind of like when you're allowed to destroy originals. So as long as you're within records management compliance, then there's a chance maybe you don't have to keep it at the department. The auditor can look at the expense report, but that's kind of where it falls to. For international travel, I thought receipts are required for conversion purposes. What we require is what the amount is and then the actual conversion. But if it's protected under the $75, then we don't require the actual receipt. So if you're protected under the 75 and it's in a foreign currency, you don't have to have the receipt. You would just have to acquire the amount just like you normally would for something under $75. So if someone lost their taxi receipt, you'd still have to go and say, hey, how much was this? How much was it? And then they can tell you that it was in a foreign currency, it was this amount. And then, but what is still required is just to show the conversion, because just showing the conversion is part of our compliance. But if it's a foreign receipt, it's protected under the $75. You just have to do those other procedures. Poster printing for the conference. That's a good one. And so it's not on there for now. So I would go ahead and get receipts for that. But I'm going to take notes of these ones that people add. And internet Wi-Fi is actually one, I believe that actually is on the state compliance. Now that you say it, I think I need to add that one. So expect Wi-Fi and internet to be on there. I'm pretty sure that they actually do mention that, and I just forgot to add it. That one should be protected. Poster printing for conference is not mentioned in the state compliance. So let me explore that, and I could reach out to our contact at OFM and see if that one could be added as well. I think that one might make it on there. But expect internet and Wi-Fi. I will be putting that one. I'm almost positive it is mentioned there. So let me get that one added. So you're asking individual departments to get rid of their individual policies and adopt this one, right? That's not necessarily the case. This is just what the actual policy is. And then if the department wants to be more strict, then that would be what the department policy is. So this is just what the default is. You're protected under the $75 with these certain expenses. And then if you choose to require receipts for them, then that's when the department policy would come into play. And so you can just be more strict on any of these things. So if you don't like the fact that people aren't turning in Uber receipts, then you would just make sure you write a department policy about it, and then that it is extended to all travelers in the same circumstance. And then that's the best way to treat that. Okay. And if I do add anything to this list, so when I add Wi-Fi, I'll include that in the listserv, and I'll make a formal announcement about it, that it's been added, or if it hasn't made it or anything like that. So I got that question written down, and I'll make sure to address that. So I won't just secretly update it. I'll make sure I'll give you guys the finalized list. And then the other exception, if anybody was wondering, is meal per diem allowance. So that is the same. So the exceptions are 75 and below for those certain expenses, and then meal per diem allowance is our other one. So no changes there. You know, if a traveler is claiming their own meals, they don't need to turn in receipts. You treat it like an allowance. And then for any meals that are provided, those need to be zeroed out as usual. So that's that's the other exception. No changes there. Should be very aware of that one. And so as a result of that policy change, it's been discovered that this was not being treated properly. So this was kind of a mistake. This is a policy change sort of as a result of the receipt policy change. And so it has been discovered that meals paid for others is not protected under that $75 rule. So it's not on the exception list. And so because of that, it will be removed from the meals paid for others compliance itself. I did my best to make sure I addressed anything where the $75 rule was written within the compliance. If anybody can think of anything from any of our compliance, please let me know. This was the only one that I could think of off the bat to make sure to update. So the meals paid for others is no longer protected under $75. So the current policy is we just require an itemized receipt if over $75. And so now we're kind of going back to what it was before, which is itemized receipt required regardless of cost. So another question. So do we need to retain receipts in our unit records for under $75 expenses, even if traveler doesn't submit them? Even if submit them just in case we are asked to produce them under $75.
So
if there's any sort of like funding concern in which you think you would be audited for under $75, then you want to address that in department policy. But what we're saying is no, you do not need to have the receipt as a back of the department. If you're being audited by a state auditor, what they do is they reference our compliance and then they match it to the expense report. If they're going off our compliance, you are protected under that $75. You do not have to have a receipt. So if you are, going off of our receipt and nothing more strict from department or funding compliance, then you would be protected. You don't need to do that. And then what gets documented on the expense report. So the expense report itself will have the amount and then what the type of expense is. And then obviously the expense report itself will have the business purpose and all of that. So that's where kind of the information gets produced, is when they see the expense report, it has all the pertinent information that they need, and then they shouldn't be asking for anything after that. So that's kind of how it works. And so you should be protected, again, unless you have funding requirements. So I know there are funding types where this may not apply. So just be aware of that. How long are the ERs visible in Ariba? Do you know? So as of right now, they are visible basically indefinitely. I know the Ariba team is working on like a purge process. Our records management, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 6 years is how long we have to keep it. So no matter what, you'll have access to these ERs for 6 years, because we're obligated to do that based on records management compliance. So that's the case for that. So if anything were to be removed, they aren't currently removed, but if they do get removed, it would be something that is basically 7 years or older is when you wouldn't be able to go into Ariba and see it anymore. Wire payment notification changes. So this just pertains to processing a wire payment for expense reports. So if you don't do wires, then this wouldn't pertain to you. So it has to do with the actual reimbursement when we go to send the wire. This was information that's been given to us by accounts payable. So our office actually doesn't process the wire payments, so I don't have a whole lot of expertise on that side of it. What happens is basically the information routes to accounts payable, and then they process the wire payment. But we heard that there was some changes related to when you receive a notification about the wire. And so I just wanted to highlight that and highlight some of the concerns people have been having and just give a little background on it. So kind of what happens, I just chatted with the accounts payable desk to kind of figure out how they do it. But they send a wire payment notification sent to the email of the preparer as well as the beneficiary. And so that's kind of what happens after the payment's been sent. Then this notification usually goes to those two people. And so what has happened is so Bank of America is the bank that we use to process these payments. And because of some changes that they released, it's affected us on our end. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. I got another question, looks like. Will Workday financial product be a records management system as Ariba is today? I believe so. I do actually have Rachel sitting next to me. Do you have any insight to that?
Yeah, hi all, this is Rachel. I'll introduce myself a little bit later. We actually don't know right now if Workday Financial will also be our records management system. It's really just too early to tell at this point. I'll be going over a timeline with you all when we get to my part of the deck that we can kind of see high level where we are right now, that will hopefully provide a little bit more context around that.
Okay. So yeah, so what Rachel said, so that's up in the air. We'll get some more information about that, and Rachel will present some more FT stuff later on. Some multi-year grants may require access for more than 6 years, so something to consider in the purge process. Yeah, definitely. I think they are very aware that it's in collaboration. That project is in collaboration with GCA and everything like that, and records management. So I'm sure they're keeping things like that in mind as they work on it. And I don't really actually have a project update or a status on that one. I haven't heard about it in quite some time. So to my knowledge, it may just be a standstill at this point. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure they're considering those things. Okay, so this is the actual change. So previously what people would receive is this like activity alert notification. I was able to redact all the information, but they would get information about, who it went to and the payment, kind of all the basic information about the wire, and it just came directly in an email. And so the problem with what Bank of America has changed is now what gets sent is just this like secure message notification. And I'm giving you the example right here. So the old one was, it just came directly to you. There's the information. Now the problem is it's coming in like a form of a sort of automatic email in which you got to click a link and to go see the information. And so just so you know, this is something that was released by Bank of America. So it's kind of out of the university's control. I even saw some of the emails, you know, back and forth with Bank of America. It's something that accounts payable is currently kind of fighting against. They're trying to get us back on the old system. So just know that we are aware that it is an annoyance, and so is accounts payable, and they're going to work on it. But I wanted, in case people haven't processed a wire payment in a while, I wanted to just let you know that there is a little bit of an issue of receiving notification about the payment. So maybe you can prepare if you have any wires coming up. And so where the issue is some people are mistaking that email as like junk email. So they just accidentally delete it and they realize they didn't get a notification. If you just look at it, you can kind of tell, like, you might just think that's an automatic email and then delete it. So what's happening is people just think they haven't got the notification, but it's coming in the form of that Bank of America email. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be processing an email, this is what it's going to, or processing wire, that's what it's going to look like. And then also what it asks you to do, unfortunately, is actually create like an account with Bank of America. It doesn't mean creating a bank account. Yeah, people will think it's fraud, exactly. It just looks like spam and all that kind of thing. So just letting you know, this is that's what the email looks like. It is legit, and you can go in there and get the information. But what was I saying? So it requires that you create like a login for Bank of America. This is what the AP desk was telling me. But it doesn't require that you have like a banking account with Bank of America. So just to be clear on that, there's a way when you click there, it's going to ask you to just like create a username and a password, create like a security question, and then it'll let you in. So just something to be aware of. If you have any wire payments coming up, just be aware that the notification of getting it is a little bit different. Keep an eye out for that email. And then if it asks you to create a login, don't be surprised by it. It's just the way things changed on Bank of America's end, and it's just unfortunately out of our control at the moment. The new system is more secure and protects information. So yeah, that would make sense. Obviously, Bank of America would have their reasons for doing it. And so AP was just pushing back just because of the ease of access to the information. But yeah, I'm sure Bank of America has their good reasons for doing it. How are we supposed to differentiate it from phishing? Is there any unique identifier that will assist us in knowing that is legitimate? To be honest, I don't have a whole lot of insight on that. This is the only one that I've really seen. So my only recommendation would be maybe just keeping this as a reference and making sure that it looks legitimate. If you had any actual concerns, so let's say you got one, but it kind of looks weird or you don't feel good about it, what I would reach out to the wire desk and say, hey, is this the official notification? Is this the right one? That would be probably the best way to be extra safe about it in case you were concerned. That would be my recommendation. Okay. All right, and that's everything that I have for travel office updates. If you think of any other questions or anything like that regarding any of that content, let me know. How do we reach the wire desk? I'm going to go ahead and type that in the chat. And it is at apwires@uw.edu.
Oh, my name from Rachel.
Okay, so it's saying from Rachel. We have her laptop set up so I can manage the chat from another computer, but it's apwires@uw.edu. Can the wire desk provide the URL? We should be looking for the hyperlink. I'm sure they could if you just said, oh, can I just have that hyperlink from that email? That way you get the hyperlink. I'm sure they'd be fine with that. But they would be the office to double check with all that stuff. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna turn it over to Rachel. So we have Rachel from UW Finance Transformation, and I'll let her introduce herself, and she's gonna give you some background info on kind of what's going on with finance transformation, give you a chance to ask some questions and all that. So there you go.
Hi, all. This is Rachel, as Kelly had mentioned. A little fun fact for you. I'm in the finance transformation department right now, but I actually used to be in procurement. So I'm really excited to be here with the travel office, or travel services, I should say, and be able to speak to you guys today. I'm on the change management team in finance transformation. So that's one of the big things. As you hear more about the program in general, you'll hear a lot about lessons learned. That's one of our lessons learned, is to really focus on change management and make sure that We're communicating as early and as often as we can. So with that, on the larger topic of finance transformation, I have a slide here. It's the university at a glance. And a lot of this is information you all will probably already know, or might just be interesting factoids for you guys to think about, right? So the big point that I want to make here on this slide is that UW finance transformation is going to affect all of UW, right? So when we look at this operating budget as kind of our first fact that we have here, we have $12.4 billion in operating budget, which is absolutely nuts to think about, right? And that's not just the academy or the research side. This is also including UW Medicine and all the hospitals and everything that we've got going on in that space, right? So kind of thinking about our size, right? We have more than 50,000 students. We have more than 40,000 employees, a lot of which really help out in an administrative capacity, a lot like you all here, that help us to be one of the top 5. A national study, it's the NSF HERD study that the government runs actually for us here in the US, has us ranked as in the top 5 of the largest universities for research and development. So we really, I think it's clear to everybody, right? We have a big impact on everyone here at the university, everyone in Washington, but we also do a lot of really neat worldwide projects. So I mentioned this healthcare piece too, right? We have 4 hospitals, we have a physicians group, we have an air rescue organization, Airlift Northwest, super cool. And we have tons of primary specialty urgent care clinics. And all of these things that we were mentioning, these are all going to be touched by finance transformation. So when we think about our financials, all of these areas are supported by FAST, our financial accounting system, right? It's 46 years old. I've been rounding up to 50, to be honest. It's about 50 years old. It supports everything on the UW Academy side, Academy meaning all of our research and all the administrative roles there. You may also hear us say UW Academy is that, and then UW Medicine meaning the healthcare portion of UW. And we support a number of different ledgers and supply chain systems over on the UW Medicine side too. And when you think about FAS, like you might have a running list here of things that would be much better in a newer system or things you'd like to improve. So I'm not going to read this slide. I'm not going to drain it for you guys. You're welcome to take a look and mull over some of these things. I'm sure you all have things to add that you would like to be different or new or better within our current state. But some of the really big ones that we have right now at our current state is that we don't really have any enterprise-wide cohesive view or consistency in our data and our reporting and kind of that financial structure there. So that's a really big thing. That's going to be a big opportunity that we have to fix. And then as well, since we have such an old system, it's hard to keep that system up and running, which I'm sure you all have had run-ins in the past. And if you haven't, hopefully you don't have too much more of them coming your way. So when we think about kind of where we are as UW as a whole, and then some of these challenges that we're having, I want to really address what we're trying to do here in finance transformation. So in the finance transformation program, the program is the research, the design, the implementation, and then the stabilization of a modern, reliable, cost-effective financial system. Not just any financial system, right? We want a financial system that's going to help satisfy our regulatory and our compliance obligations so that this isn't something that we have to chase or have so many dispersed and unique requirements, right? All over the university at unit level, department level, division level. And then we also want a financial system that's going to help assist us in our institutional and unit management. So when we do these things correctly, we're going to start seeing a lot of benefits. We're going to see that we're able to make informed decisions about strategies and plans using that big picture, consistent financial data. And then we'll be able to also ideally see where we are as we make progress towards those plans, have some metrics around those sort of things. With the new implementation, our hope is that we're going to be continually improving the university's financial position, since it will be easier to see. Another really big benefit that we're going to see is that we're going to be able to derive the maximum value from all of the available financial resources we have. And when I say that, I mean not just the systems that we're using, not just taking out some of the work redundancy that we currently have of having to enter data multiple times or following up on this process or this piece of paper or this Excel workbook over here. I know we're not in a room right now, but I would imagine in the group that we have a lot of wisdom in this group. There are many people at UW that have tons of expertise in their own units, in kind of just the practices and research and all these things going on. So that's something that we're excited about and eager to be able to better leverage in the future as well. And I don't have a slide on this. I kind of assume everybody knows, but just in case you don't know, we will be moving to Workday. So you'll be hearing more about Workday as time goes on. So we've talked a little bit about, right, the big picture here of what we're doing and what we're hoping to be doing in finance transformation. So now that we've got a little bit of a groundwork there, what is next? So as I had mentioned, the program is going to be focused through these 4 phases, right? We're responsible for readiness, design, implementing, and then stabilizing our new financial system. And we've already completed readiness, which is great. For all of you, you may remember the Hackett study, or may have heard some things about a Hackett study that was done. This was completed during readiness phase, and it was really about doing a lot of research to see what exactly do we do for our financial processes, and what are the business processes, and what are the systems that we have going on right now at the university. And we found out that we have more than 800 different financial systems in play just to do the basic things that we have to do as a university to continue existing, right? Making payments to suppliers, doing things like travel reimbursements, all of those financial activities that everybody needs to do. And having 800 systems is just nuts. And I think we were kind of all surprised to see how high and see how many things are truly going on once we kind of take a peek deeper into this landscape of financial transformation and just processing financial transactions in general. So currently we're in design, which is a little bit maybe of a misnomer. Design, at least to me, under first impression, design sounds like we're in the system and we're designing it, but really design, as it's named here, is about focusing in on all of that research that we got from the Hackett study and thinking about our scope, our schedule, and our budget. So scope, schedule, and budget is really the detailed work that we're doing right now in design. I know earlier we had a question about our recording management system. So right now we really are still doing a lot of research, and one of the things that we're doing with the 800 systems that we found out we have is meeting with all of the owners of those systems and really thinking about, do we need this system? What work is it accomplishing? Is this a system that we may keep in the future? Maybe we'll keep it, we'll make some adjustments, or maybe we can retire it as we look to the future and what our financial state will really look like. So in terms of thinking about our records management, that's going to be something that we're still kind of just doing a lot of studying or research on, something that we're still really working through. And we'll have more updates on those and all of the other systems kind of as we move forward through the program. So the big thing in design, and you guys will see it on the next slide, is that we are very close to being completed with our scope and schedule of budget. It needs to be approved by the Board of Regents, and we'll be meeting with them at the end of this year and getting their feedback on what exactly is going to happen and what exactly is not. So a lot of the dates here are tentative, and things that you see are tentative until we truly get approved for exactly what we are going to do in the program by the Board of Regents later this year. So once we get that approval, we will be ready to start implementation. We are expecting that implementation is going to start in January. So that's really where things are going to start taking off in the program. You all will be hearing a lot more from us in all different ways. It's going to be 30 months. So tentatively, assuming everything is approved, as we have our fingers crossed, we're feeling pretty confident it will likely be this way, but you know, you never know, we'll see. Through that 30-month implementation would take us approximately to about July 2022. And once we hit go live, we'll be in an 18-month program, minimally 18-month program called stabilization. We will be making sure that everything was implemented well, making sure that our business processes are updated and they're working, and working with key stakeholders and units and administrators and schools and colleges just to make sure that we have landed on our feet and we are stable to continue with our work moving forward. So as I mentioned, we have a timeline here. This is our program status, and there's just some really key things, some big things that we worked on through the readiness phase. And then where we are currently in the design phase, we are planning on wrapping up the design phase at the end of this year. And as I had mentioned, the next big thing we've got going on in design is that Board of Regents approval. And once we have that, we will be able to definitively say, right, here's exactly what we're doing, here's when we're going to do it, let's get our hands dirty and let's start doing this work. One of the other things, or a couple of the other things that are really important, I think, to think about and just kind of be aware of is that some of you may have already attended some of our deep dive sessions for Workday, really getting into the system and going through some demos and seeing the types of functionality that are already there. And then at the higher kind of administrative level, we are doing unit profile reviews to go over the data that we found in the Hackett study and make sure that still rings true, still makes sense. So we'll be doing a lot more of that, a lot more of engagement and making sure that people are seeing the system and that we're hearing from them. So here's kind of where we are today. This is our tentative implementation timeline. We're going to be planning, and once we actually hit the go live and we're ready to go for our scope, schedule, and budget, we'll be doing some planning, we'll be doing some architecting, which will actually be truly more of the design type work, thinking about business processes, and getting all of our stakeholders involved to make sure that anything that we do design or any of the things we do design in Workday makes sense, not only for us at the unit level, but us for the university level as a whole. So will let you guys look over some of these things after we get the slide deck out.
Yeah, just as a reminder, I will be sending out the slide deck via the listserv. So if you want to go and get into the weeds of this, you're welcome to look at it at a later date. And then Rachel will be sharing, how you can get in contact with FT. So you can always express concerns. And so if you want to come back and get into like the finite details of these and you have any questions, you can always reach out later.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big questions that you guys may be thinking of, if not, you will likely be thinking of it in the coming days, in the coming years and months, is how are we going to get there? So we have a bunch of different ways that we want to keep engaged and keep our thumb on the pulse of what's important and what's going on. But we wanted to share kind of 2 examples of the ways that you all may get involved. So we have a question. I can back up. Question from the chat is, a recommendation. We'd recommend an option for Workday, that Workday holds records management similar to physical records like Ariba. Makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of good content in this comment, so I don't want to read it all through you, but we'll definitely take a note of it.
So yeah, the comment is regarding what we were discussing before. So Rachel's discussing about Workday potentially being a records management. So she'll make sure to write that down and take it back to our team as a concern.
Definitely,
yeah.
Definitely. So one of the ways that we want to be able to leverage some of that wisdom and knowledge that we have in the room already is going to be in some of the ways of how do we get there, right? How do we get to go live? How do we make this transformation something that is as good as it can be and as helpful and as beneficial as it can be? So process transformation teams are one way that we're going to do that. And then you'll also say UTG on the slide. That stands for user task group. So to break this down, we are currently in the process of setting up what we're calling process transformation teams. You may hear to them referred to as PTTs because we love acronyms here at the university. So our PTT groups are going to be a dedicated group of influencers, people who are really knowledgeable and who can think really broadly about UW and what we need on our systems, our reports, our processes. These are going to be people from all over UW, both on UW Academy side and both on the UW Medicine side. As I had mentioned, we're currently in the process of standing up and reaching out to administrators and people who are interested or people who express interest to kind of formalize that. The PTT group is going to be working with the UW FT program team. They're going to be working with the legacy technical teams. So the teams that work on all of our old proprietary systems like FAS or PAS. And they're going to be working a lot with our change champions, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide. So we'll have this really broad groups of people who can help us really think these through and who can help us plan for how we're going to do implementations and how our finance transformation is going to affect or make changes, right, on our systems, reports, and processes. What we're going to need to do, though, is we're not going to be able to rely on just these groups of people. The process transformation teams, as we are currently thinking of them, will probably be relatively small. When I say small, I mean like 6 to 10, maybe 12, so that we don't have too many people in the room and that we can actually think and get everyone's opinions and feedback heard. So one of the things that these process transformation teams are going to need to do is they're going to need to have others who are the specialists in certain areas, say travel as one of the specialists, and we're going to need to be able to pull on those specialists across the UW in order to really inform our PTT members and to check in and make sure that they're understanding the things that are important to us here at UW at the unit level, at the department level. And so these user task groups, some of you who are in attendance, I would expect will probably be asked to join one of these or may be interested in volunteering to join one of these. So the UTG groups are going to be spun up kind of as needed on certain topics or certain areas, maybe similar to travel or similar to reimbursements as we go through the entire implementation process.
I have a question for you. So when are these PTT teams and UTG teams going to be formed? You may have mentioned on the timeline already.
Yeah,
so when you're expecting that, like, people to start hearing about it?
Yeah, so the PTT groups are currently being formed and finalized right now. So those will likely be, I don't want to say stagnant, but they're going to be a group, right, or several groups. Those groups are going to be established throughout the duration of implementation as we're doing all this planning and implementing and working things through in the system. And then the UTG groups are going to be really used as needed. So we may have somebody join UTG, sorry, there's so many acronyms here, a UTG, a user task group, to give us some of their expertise on travel, maybe specifically the $75 reimbursement waiver, which everyone loves, right?
So they're kind of situational.
Yeah, it'll be more situational.
Okay, now we're trying to figure out travel. All right, let's
get this one piece. Yeah, let's get all of the experts in the room here that are gonna have all the information that we know we need to consider. So that's one way of engagement that you all may be seeing more or hearing more of. Looks like we've got a question. How can we get involved with the PTT or the UTG groups if interested? Wonderful question. I have our email at the end of the slide deck. You guys are welcome to send an email to uwftask@uw.edu. And you guys are welcome to use that email also for any general feedback or questions or concerns or anything like that. But yeah, we're absolutely accepting volunteers and taking note of people that want to get involved and people that want to hear more so that we can engage with them. And this actually brings us to our next slide, which is about change champions. So change champions are going to be a really important group of people. We're also going to be asking for volunteers. We currently are. We got our first volunteer last week during one of our outreaches. So
what you want to do, just make sure you reach out to their email. And you want to just provide some background information. You know, what department are you part of? Kind of what's your role? And then just say, this is kind of my expertise and I'm interested in getting involved. So that way they can, actually know kind of what you work on and then see if maybe there's a fit for a team, stuff like that.
Yep. And the Change Champion is a group that we will be establishing that'll be similar. So the Change Champions are going to be our most important messengers. They're going to be people who are really on the pulse of what's going on in the program. They're going to be echoing the program messaging that we get from our governance and our sponsor teams that are guiding us through this big transition. And they are going to be our eyes and ears in a way. So our Change Champions are going to be able to amplify any concerns and risks that they see kind of on the ground at the unit level or at the end user level to the team, but also vice versa, right? They'll also be able to share information about whatever is being considered or what changes we are thinking about implementing for certain types of business processes. So we have got kind of like our communication triangle here. So our Change Champions Network are going to be experts like you guys that are going to work with the OCM, that's the change management team, and unit readiness leads and the program, and we will be working to make sure that everybody is as aware as possible between the governance and the sponsors who actually get to make the decisions, and then where we are, right, a little bit more removed from that process. So if you're interested in also being a change champion, say the same thing, please send us an email. I just moved slides real quick to show our email address. It's uwftask@uw.edu. And kind of on this note, also, you'll be hearing a lot more from us over time. Kelly and I were chatting about having finance transformation at all of the future forums too for updates and to be able to answer questions. Something else that's going to be really big will be kind of this engagement piece as we move forward. And you may hear or may not hear, but right now is the time that we are just starting to do outreach and just starting to meet with units. So right now, a lot of the outreach that we're doing is at the administrator, at the school and the college level. So you may not have heard too much yet, but you will have things to hear in the future, certainly.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So yeah, we'll definitely be planning on having them come out. And so they don't really have like a big update as far as like travel specifically, just because of where they're at in the program. And so kind of as we move through our information meetings, make sure you kind of keep track of it, because as we get more travel related content related to FT, that's where it's going to be one of our main ways that we communicate with you guys. So we'll definitely keep, collaborating with them to keep you guys updated.
Yeah, so the only other thing I would have to add is that if you guys aren't signed up for our newsletter yet, you're welcome to sign up. You can get onto our finance transformation website, which I see is not on the slide. I can get it added for you guys before Kelly.
I can send that out on the list, sir. If you just Google UW Finance Transformation, you'll land.
You'll find it.
You'll find their homepage, and they have a newsletter. It's definitely good to keep track of what they're working on.
Exactly.
I'll include it in my email when I send it out too, so you can have it.
Yep, and our newsletter is starting to take off too. We've been updating it monthly with things that we've got going on in the program. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't signed up for that yet, to hop on our website and to sign up.
Cool.
So.
Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you everybody for attending. Just a reminder, we'll be doing the in-person. So if you wanted to stop by and say hi, we're gonna be coming in costume, but also just so you know, we'll be taking some photos. So maybe in the next information slot or meeting, we'll show you all our Halloween costumes if you miss it. That might be kind of fun. But thanks for coming. And as a reminder, any feedback is always welcome. If you have any additional questions, concerns, this is our contact info, which you're already aware of. And very informative. Thank you. Appreciate that. And so, but we're always open to any sort of negative feedback or maybe content that we're not including. Maybe we should be talking about something else. So if you ever have those thoughts, please let us know. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.